Welcome! You're listening to the Uncharted Lancaster podcast, where we explore the hidden histories, forgotten places, and long-buried secrets of Lancaster County. Using modern digital storytelling tools, each episode brings a new piece of local lore to life, revealing the strange, the surprising, and the stories history left behind. Let's begin.
Have you ever, walked past an old brick building in your downtown and just wondered what on earth it's hiding?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Right. I mean, picture this. You're walking down a typical modern street. Cars are driving by. People are staring at their phones. And then you step through a set of these heavy, towering wooden doors.
And suddenly the noise just stops.
Exactly. The 21st century just vanishes. You are standing inside a room that is completely frozen in the year 1864.
It is a profoundly jarring experience when that happens. Almost cinematic, really.
Yeah.
Because we rush past these facades all the time, totally unaware of the layers of, human drama, economic upheaval, literal warfare hidden just behind the brickwork. It really shifts how you view your own neighborhood.
It really does. And today we're taking a deep dive into one of those exact buildings.
I'm so excited for this one.
We've got a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive, including historical markers, archives from the Columbia Historical Society, and some truly striking architectural photographs. And based on all of that, we are going to explore the first National Bank of Columbia, Pennsylvania.
But this isn't just a story about a bank, is it?
No, not at all. This single brick townhouse survived an invading army, hosted a bank vault in its living room, and witnessed the birth of modern American money.
Well, to understand how a building survives that much history, we actually have to go back to before it ever held a single dollar.
Right, its origins.
Exactly. Long before it was a federally chartered bank, it was a private home. It was built in 1814 for James Wright Jr.
And he was a pretty prominent guy, right?
Oh, very. A wealthy merchant and the grandson of the town's founding father, John Wright.
I mean, 14 rooms, 6,500 square feet. In 1814, that is an absolute mega mansion.
Massive. The sources describe it as a federal-style brick townhouse.
And for those of us who aren't architects, that basically means it was designed to project serious authority.
Yeah. Exactly. Federal style is all about strict symmetry, imposing flat brick facades, a sense of permanent order.
It sat on a huge tract of land laid out in 1795 with the rather optimistic name of Columbia continued.
Which I love. It was a statement piece. Wright was planting a flag, signaling that his family in this town were here to stay and dominate local commerce.
Right.
But the fascinating thing about urban architecture is how quickly those grand intentions get rewritten by market forces.
Oh, yeah. Because it didn't stay a quiet, orderly, private residence for very long.
Not at all.
Over the next few decades, the property changed hands and underwent what I can only really describe as a 19th century reality show house flip.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Right. You take this wealthy merchant's sprawling mega mansion and you turn it into a rowdy tavern.
Naturally.
And then it becomes a hotel. I think it operated as the Mansion House and later the National House Hotel.
Yep, that's what the records show.
And then, inexplicably, you stick a bank right in the living room. In 1852, two local businessmen, Solomon and Daniel Detweiler, decide to start the Detweiler Brothers Bank. And they do it by renting just two front corner rooms of this hotel.
Right.
Why on earth would you launch a serious financial institution in the lobby of a busy, loud hotel? It just seems completely counterintuitive to me.
Well, I mean, it only seems counterintuitive to our modern sensibilities.
What do you mean?
We expect banks to be these imposing, purpose-built fortresses, right?
Yeah.
Silent lobbies, velvet ropes.
Sure.
But mid-19th century commerce was incredibly fluid. It was highly opportunistic. A hotel wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the absolute nexus of a town's economic life.
Oh, like a bustling hub?
Exactly. It was full of traveling merchants, salesmen, teamsters. There was continuous cash flow. So if you were starting a bank from scratch, you don't build a fortress on an empty street. You set up a desk exactly where the money is already changing hands.
Okay, wow. So they were basically just inserting themselves into the middle of the town's existing cash pipeline.
Precisely. They started small, acting as local currency brokers and lenders for the merchants who were just, passing through the hotel doors.
And it worked
Brilliantly. They were so successful that Solomon Detweiler actually ended up buying the entire property.
Wow. Good for him.
Yeah, and he moved his wife, Mary Catherine, and their two kids, Horace Neffy, into the massive back residential portion of the house. And then he just continued running the bank right there in the front rooms.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because living in the back of a busy bank sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Not to mention incredibly dangerous. But to understand why the Detweilers needed to live on site and guard this operation so closely, we really have to look outside the bank's front windows.
We do. We have to look at the exploding economy of Columbia, Pennsylvania.
Because it was definitely not some sleepy little hamlet.
Far from it. Columbia was rapidly becoming a massive transportation and industrial hub. It was situated right on the eastern bank of the Susquehanna River.
Which made it a critical artery for moving goods.
Exactly. And the scale of the infrastructure described in the Historical Society transcripts is just staggering. You've got ferries constantly crossing the river. It's a major terminus for the Pennsylvania Canal.
And the bridge. We have to talk about the bridge.
Oh, yes.
In 1814, literally the same year the townhouse was built, they constructed the world's longest covered bridge across the Susquehanna.
It was an engineering marvel.
It was 5,690 feet long, supported by 54 massive stone piers.
Just incredible for that era.
Just imagine a mile-long wooden tunnel suspended over a river, filled day and night with wagons, livestock, raw materials.
That bridge facilitated an enormous, relentless flow of traffic. But, Columbia wasn't just a pass-through town for transportation.
Right.
It was a heavy industry powerhouse.
Right.
And here's a wild fact. The town was so prominent early on that it actually missed becoming the United States capital by just one single vote in 1790.
Wait, really? Just one vote?
One vote. That's how important this area was. And by the late 19th century, the sources note there were 13 blast furnaces operating within a mere 3-mile radius of the town.
Let's pause on that. 13 blast furnaces.
Yeah.
We are talking about the production of pig iron here. This isn't light manufacturing.
Not at all.
This is smelting raw iron ore with coal and limestone at thousands of degrees. They were creating the heavy raw iron ingots that would literally build the American Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. The heat, the smoke, the constant roar of those furnaces. The air in Columbia would have been thick with the physical reality of extreme wealth creation.
And that extreme wealth creation required massive amounts of capital.
Yes. The blast furnaces, the lumber processing, the coal yards, all of it. They required a financial engine capable of handling vast sums of money.
Right, to facilitate these complex long-distance transactions.
Exactly. Which brings us to the pivotal year of 1864.
Abraham Lincoln signs the National Bank Act.
Yes. And the Detweiler brothers take their tavern-based banking operation and deposit a staggering $100,000 into the U.S. Treasury to officially become the first National Bank of Columbia.
And they secure charter number 371.
They do.
But, okay, I have to push back here for a second. $100,000 in 1864 is the equivalent of millions today.
Oh, tens of millions, easily.
Why tie up all that liquid capital in treasury bonds just to get a piece of paper with Charter 371 on it? I mean, it seems like a massive vanity project for a local family.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it wasn't a vanity project at all. It was a desperate operational necessity.
How so?
Because before the National Bank Act of 1864, banking in the United States was what we call wildcat banking.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It was pure chaos. You had thousands of local banks, state banks, and even large companies issuing their own separate paper currencies.
So a dollar wasn't just a dollar.
Not even close. I mean, imagine you're trying to run a business today, but your local grocery store only accepts Apple gift cards. Your supplier demands casino chips, and your employer pays you in arcade tokens.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
That was the friction of cross-state commerce before 1864. A local banknote from a bank in Pennsylvania might be heavily discounted if you tried to spend it in Ohio.
Because people didn't trust the paper.
Right. They didn't know if the bank backing it actually had the gold or silver in their vault to honor it.
Okay, so the Detweilers realized they couldn't fund a regional industrial empire with local tavern cash.
Exactly. The merchants running those 13 blast furnaces needed money that was universally accepted. By depositing that massive $100,000 in U.S. bonds with the Treasury, the Detweilers were essentially buying the right to issue standard, federally backed national banknotes.
Oh, I see.
They were basically installing a universal power adapter for the town's economy.
That is a great way to put it.
When a Columbia iron merchant traveled to Philadelphia or Baltimore, his money was now guaranteed by the United States Treasury. not just by the word of two brothers operating out of a former hotel.
They were bringing federal stability to a booming, volatile industrial frontier.
Exactly. The mechanism at play.
But with that massive influx of federal backing and industrial wealth comes incredible danger. I mean, you can't hold the payroll for 13 blast furnaces without putting a giant target on your back.
No, you really can't.
Which brings us to the physical reality of the bank itself. And this is where those photographic sources become so revealing.
Yes, the photos are amazing.
Looking at the exterior photo, you can see how they adapted this residential townhouse to handle high-stakes finance. They added a very unique corner entrance specifically for bank patrons, keeping them separate from the residential areas.
It's very cleverly done.
And the doors. They are a marvel of 19th century engineering. Magnificent exterior pocket doors made of solid walnut. They didn't swing outward. They actually slid back into hollow pockets, built right into the thick brick walls on either side of the corner.
Right. It is a beautiful defensive mechanism masquerading as architectural elegance.
Yeah.
And then you step inside. The interior photograph provided in our sources is breathtaking. It shows these custom-made black walnut paying and receiving teller cages.
They look so intricate.
The woodwork is ornate, almost ecclesiastical in its detail. You see the tiled floor, the intricate metal grate over the teller window. The entire visual language of that room is designed to project wealth, stability, and unshakable permanence to anyone walking in off the dusty street.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me, though.
All right.
Amidst all this high-end Victorian walnut and right next to the massive, impenetrable steel walk-in vault they installed, there is this hilariously low-tech piece of equipment.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah. The historical markers point out that the museum still has the original check canceller used by the tellers. And you know what it is? It is a literal tree stump and a specially designed hammer.
Yes. It is the ultimate analog solution to a very serious financial problem.
Right.
Once a check was cashed, it had to be permanently marked so it couldn't be presented again.
I just love the visual juxtaposition of it all. You have this federally chartered $100,000 backed institution utilizing massive steel vaults, and their cutting-edge method for processing a canceled check is literally smashing it against a chunk of wood with a hammer.
It's amazing.
It's brute force frontier technology sitting right next to high finance.
What's fascinating here is how these physical artifacts, the teller cages, the vault, the tree stump, they anchor the grand abstract economic history of the United States to the gritty day-to-day human experience of running a small town bank.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The tree stump reminds you that banking was physical labor. And the danger you mentioned earlier, that physical reality is etched into the building as well.
Oh, the bullet hole.
Yes. The sources point out a physical bullet hole that is still visible in the bank today, left behind from the only known thwarted robbery attempt at the First National Bank of Colombia.
Just a permanent reminder that being the federal piggy bank for a steel and iron hub makes you a target.
Absolutely.
But local robbers were actually the least of their worries, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
In the summer of 1863, the American Civil War arrived quite literally at their doorstep. And the danger wasn't just to the bank's vault, but to the entire town's existence.
This is undoubtedly one of the most dramatic and terrifying moments in Columbia's history. During the Gettysburg Campaign, Confederate General Jubal Early was advancing rapidly through Pennsylvania.
Right.
The Union forces were terrified that Early would use Columbia as a crossing point over the Susquehanna River. If he crossed there, he could attack the state capital of Harrisburg from the rear and then move eastward to capture Lancaster and Philadelphia, destroying all the railroads and vital industrial supply lines along the way.
And the Confederate Army's only viable path across that wide river was that magnificent 5,690-foot wooden-covered bridge we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
So the townspeople and the local Union militia faced an impossible choice. Now, couldn't they just barricade the bridge and defend it? I mean, why go to extremes?
Well, they simply didn't have the manpower or the artillery to hold off a seasoned Confederate force. General Early's troops were battle-hardened.
Right. They would have just steamrolled them.
Exactly. The militia knew that if the Confederates secured the bridgehead, the river would be breached. So, to stop the invading army, they had to destroy their own economic lifeline.
Wow.
In June 1863, they packed the world's longest covered bridge with explosives and intentionally burned it to the waterline.
That is just incredible. Imagine the mayor of your city deciding to blow up the main interstate highway just to stop an invading army.
It's hard to fathom,
The smoke from the bridge must have blackened the sky right over the bank. They were burning their primary connection to the outside markets.
It was a monumental, devastating sacrifice. But strategically, it worked. The sources note that General John B. Gordon, the Confederate commander on the scene, later admitted that the burning of the bridge thwarted one of General Robert E. Lee's main strategic goals for the invasion of Pennsylvania.
That's huge. And the bank, sitting just a short distance from the river, somehow survived this intense proximity to the crossfire?
It did. But the town's infrastructure was severely crippled, requiring massive capital from institutions like the Detweiler's Bank to eventually rebuild.
And they did rebuild, and the bank kept operating. For decades, the Detweiler family continued to live in the back portion of the house and run the bank in the front.
Right up until the early 20th century.
Yeah, but the demands of commerce eventually outgrew the space. By 1917, economic shifts and the sheer volume of banking required the First National Bank of Colombia to merge with another institution.
Right.
And they moved operations up the street into a much larger, new white granite building.
Which leaves us with a fascinating architectural puzzle. You now have a vacant, highly specialized 19th century commercial space featuring heavy vaults and teller cages embedded permanently inside a residential townhouse.
Which begs the question, how on earth did a vacant 19th century bank survive the 20th century wrecking ball? Because the 1900s were famously unkind to old, obsolete buildings.
Very unkind.
Oh.
But it had a guardian angel, initially in the form of Solomon Detweiler's daughter, Effie. Both Effie and her brother Horace had continued living in the residential part of the sprawling house long after the bank moved out.
Okay.
And in 1925, Effie made a crucial decision. She generously offered the Columbia Women's Club the use of the vacant corner bank space to serve as the new home for the Columbia Free Public Library.
A public library operating inside a bank vault. That is amazing.
Isn't it great?
Just imagine browsing for a novel surrounded by Victorian walnut teller cages. But it kept the space occupied, right?
Yeah.
Heated and cared for.
Exactly. It gave it a purpose.
But Effie passed away in 1954, eventually leaving the property to the library. And when the library decided to move to a newly built modern facility in 1958, the old building sat empty once again.
Which is the danger zone.
Yeah. This is the moment where, in almost every other American town, the bulldozers show up.
It very nearly was the end of the story. But then a local couple named Lloyd and Jean Motter purchased the property.
And the sources detail how the Motters essentially dedicated their lives to this space. They spent countless dollars and endless hours researching.
Total devotion.
They tracked down original artifacts that had been scattered over the decades. They hunted for missing documents, sourced period-accurate antique furniture, and even found authentic 19th century currencies to restore the space to exactly how it looked during its banking heyday.
The amount of work is staggering.
After almost a decade of painstaking work, they opened the first National Bank Museum in April of 1967. And today, their daughter Nora and her husband Michael Stark continue to run it, carrying on that preservation legacy.
And, this raises an important question about the philosophy of what we call adaptive reuse and historic preservation.
Oh.
How so?
Well, when the library moved in back in the 1920s, they were adapting a commercial space for a new civic purpose. But what the Motters did in 1958 was entirely different and, frankly, radical.
Radical.
The video transcript explicitly points out that during this post-war period in America, the preservation and restoration of historic structures by private, independent citizens was practically unheard of.
Oh, right. Because the 1950s and 60s were the height of the urban renewal movement.
Exactly.
The prevailing wisdom across America was that old meant obsolete. Cities were actively bulldozing their historic downtowns to make way for massive parking lots, interstate highways, sleek mid-century modern architecture.
The dominant philosophy was entirely forward-looking. Progress meant concrete and glass. So the idea of a local family buying a decaying, complicated property solely to resurrect its 19th century past for future generations to learn from, they were visionary pioneers.
They really were. They recognized intrinsic historical value in a structure where most of society just saw a maintenance liability that was blocking a potential parking lot.
So what does this all mean for us today?
That's the big question.
For me, the most striking takeaway is the sheer stubborn dedication of these families. When you think about it, just two families, the Detweilers for over a century, And then the Modders and the Starks for the last 60 plus years have been personally guarding this single piece of property.
Yeah.
They shielded it from local robbers, from the chaos of the Civil War, from the urban renewal wrecking balls of the 1950s, and just from the general decay of time.
It is a remarkable, unbroken chain of stewardship. It's exactly why the sources proudly state that this is one of the very few surviving, completely intact Victorian bank interiors in the entire United States, still preserved in its original residential setting.
An architectural unicorn.
Truly.
It really makes you want to look a little closer at the architecture in your own neighborhood. So, the next time you walk past an old brick building in your town, remember this story.
Take a second look.
Remember that a simple brick facade might hold the layered history of a wealthy merchant's mega mansion, a rowdy hotel, an underground railroad crossing point, a library, and a meticulously restored museum, all occupying the exact same square footage over 2 centuries. The First National Bank of Colombia isn't just a quirky architectural gem. It's a microcosm of the American story, reflecting everything from the untamed frontier to the explosive Industrial Revolution, right through to the modern historic preservation movement.
It certainly is a mirror for the nation's broader development. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Right, what is it?
Well, the historical overview in our sources mentions that after the incredible boom of the 19th century, Colombia faced a severe economic decline in the 20th century. Changes in transportation, the decline of the canals, and the shifting of heavy industry hit the town incredibly hard.
Right.
But ironically, this severe economic depression might be the exact reason this rare Victorian bank interior survived completely intact.
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating paradox. Poverty acting as a preservative.
Precisely. Think about the mechanics of urban development. If the town had continued its explosive, unchecked industrial boom into the 1950s and 60s, property values on the main streets would have soared astronomically.
Right, they would have needed the space.
That 1814 brick building, sitting on a prime commercial corner lot, almost certainly would have been purchased by a developer, bulldozed without a second thought, and replaced with a mid-century glass and steel office tower.
So true.
Sometimes, a town's economic pause, a period of quiet struggle, is the very thing that saves its soul from being paved over. So the next time you step off a modern street and into a room perfectly frozen in time, look around and ask yourself, was this beautiful space saved by prosperity, or was it saved by being left behind?
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Uncharted Lancaster podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating or review wherever you listen. It really helps more people discover the show. For more fascinating local history, visit unchartedlancaster.com. And if you'd like to go deeper, check out one of Adam Zern's books at unchartedlancaster.com/books. Until next time, keep exploring.